Let's take a look at a sisters list that topped a seriously big 40k tournament, and did so in style with a unit of those Paragon Warsuit Nundam walkers present in the battle line. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking sisters, and we're going to be taking a look at a couple of successful tournament lists over the past weekend, including a seriously impressive achievement of winning a massive tournament with the Adepta Sororitas, despite the sisters maybe not having the most stellar tournament record over the last few months. For most of the Armour of Contempt factions like Sisters of Battle, it's generally helped them out a fair bit, but doesn't really seem to have quite made them the absolute top tier of the meta. It still seems to be harder to win with your Space Marines and your Sororitas compared with things like Tau, Tyranids, and Eldar. It is pretty cool to see how Sisters lists are adapting though. Not only did their basic infantry just get that little bit tougher to shift, but they've also got a fair few miracle dice kicking around, with some extra ones being generated every battle round, so at least a few of their choices got a bit more interesting. I think that it's quite cool that the winning list also managed to make use of the Paragon Warsuits as well. The new and shiny Sisters Battle Walkers, who have kind of divided opinion a little bit. Personally, I think they're quite good fun. They seem to fit in pretty well with the 40k aesthetic to me, though I have seen people criticising them a bit for aping the Nemesis Dread Knight a bit too much, but for Sisters of Battle. Their stories may be a little bit typical of a fair few Games Workshop shiny releases. They were initially really quite underwhelming and tame when the Codex came out, maybe not too bad damage dealers, as they're a core unit with some decent threat both at range and in melee. However, they basically weren't ever taken in competitive lists because their toughness was kind of downright bad. They do have a 2+ armor save, 5 wounds and -1 damage, which sounds good on paper, but when they cost 80 or 90 points per model, that still equates to being pretty easy to shift, particularly with the big D3+3 damage weapons that go around quite a bit. Since then though, they've received 2 rather major buffs. First up, a 10 points cut in chapter approved. In general, new Games Workshop releases do tend to get a bit of a points bump if they've made the rules super bad. But then perhaps even more importantly, Armour of Contempt is perhaps more relevant for these girls than just about anyone else in the Sisters of Battle. They don't get any sort of imball save besides their standard Shield of Faith, so Armour of Contempt is going to be relevant against just about every damage, anything besides AP0 and mortal wounds. It really does help to cover their greatest weakness, as before that they were basically a battle line unit that couldn't really stand on the battle line for fear of just getting shot off the board and losing far too many points too easily. At least now when you are getting shot by your las cannons and things, you'll get a 4+ save against AP-3. Certainly not too bad, and it makes it a bit more tempting for some auto saves with things like low miracle dice, or perhaps a cheeky command point reroll here or there. Overall, it just makes them a lot more justifiable, as their damage output was already kind of good, and were a great target for things like Morven Val's rerolls. Moving on to the successful list in question, run by Jesse Sell to take first at the Bay Area Open, a massive event of 130 players, and really quite an achievement to be going 9 rounds undefeated, particularly in a meta where there's so many scary Tyranids about. The list is made of a single Bloody Rose battalion. Bloody Rose does seem to be the way to go for the vast majority of competitive lists since the sub-faction changes in January. They're the ones that give you an extra pip of AP and attack on the charge, making your melee massively more dangerous, never mind their stratagem Tear Them Down that adds insult to injury. Leading the list is a quintet of characters. There's Morven Val and Celestine, Morven Val being a great combat powerhouse in herself and providing nice rerolls to any of the other core units that want it, and Celestine being a fast-moving holy nightmare, really quite hard to put down, and more so with Armour of Contempt now. And when you do eventually kill her, there's every chance she's just going to be standing up again anyway. Then there's a very fighty Canoness with Blessed Blade and Inferno Pistol. This setup seems to be really quite a common one, taking the Chaplet of Sacrifice to allow you to reroll hit rolls, getting a free stratagem once per game, and also getting to fight in death for free when they're killed. Pretty much guarantees that she's going to be doing a fair bit of harm if she can get into the opponent, and really punishes you for killing her in melee. She then gets even more dangerous by the Bloody Rose's Blazing Ire trait, +1 attack and advance and charge, and the excellent combat support that is Word of the Emperor, selecting one unit next to her to fight last, a great support for the other sisters' units, and the powerful ability to remove imball saves from an enemy unit once per game, meaning that she and any sisters nearby will obliterate enemy elites. As if all this stackiness weren't enough as well, Bloody Rose also have a 1 CP stratagem for Outrage of the Matriarch. If you're fighting a unit with more wounds than her, then she gets +1 to wound as well, and an extra AP-2 on wound rolls of a 6. Utterly lethal, and her and just about any one of these units could make a massive credible threat in combat. Finally, for elite support characters, there's a Hospitaller which can give you a feel no pain and heal slain models to the squad, potentially in such a way that you could increase threat ranges, and a Dogmata with spiritual fortitude and the verse of holy piety, taking 2 of the litanies with the sigil Ecclesiasticus. Spiritual fortitude is quite a meta-specific one, as it means that one unit can be not affected by any psychic powers, quite a handy counter to the powerful Tyrannid psychic phase, and Holy Piety allows a unit to get an extra Sacred Rite as well, potentially allowing you to stack exploding 6s to hit in combat with also +1 to charge. You can always fall back on Warhammer as well for those reroll hits if it makes sense. Then in terms of the units themselves, there's 3 5-girl Battle Sister squads, cheap obsec for objectives and actions, and particularly annoying to shift in cover with Armour of Contempt now. And then there's the unit of 3 Paragon Warsuits, all of them armed with multi-melters and storm bolters, and taking the higher AP extra attack Paragon Warblades over the maces. Bloody Rose do also have a special stratagem for them out of their supplement, allowing exploding 4s to hit against big units, so if they do get into something that's got 6 or more models in, they're going to be absolutely wrecking face, never mind all the other buffs that they already receive. Even just their shooting alone is pretty mighty if you can throw Val's buffs on them. 6 multi-melter shots, all re-rolling hits and wounds is no joke at all, and should lay waste to most tanks in the game, particularly if you've got a miracle dice spare for a bit of a damage boost. Of course, they could potentially be using the re-rolls both at range and in melee as well, so are definitely going to be a higher priority threat for the enemy to take down. Then there's 2 units of Repentia, 1 unit of 5 and 1 unit of 10. They potentially could be starting in the Rhino, or even going into Strategic Reserve and auto-making charges with Miracle Dice. 2 units of 5 Zephyrim with the Penance to allow reroll charges, again enormously strong in Bloody Rose, might be nice for fighting alongside the Canoness, and get absolutely brutal when they're buffed up with Baal's rerolls as well, all their low strength attacks really do work there. There's a unit of 6 Seraphim with 4 Hand Flamers. With the 1 command point stratagem, they get to shoot twice and lay something like 30 odd strength 4 hits on an enemy unit, and having 6 of them means that they can automatically do retrieve Nachman data if they need to do that instead. Lastly, for the squads, there's a unit of 5 Retributors with 4 Multi-Melters, a Combi Flamer, and 1 Cherub. I'm going to guess that they might start in the Rhino, and they have the very fortunate ability to be able to use the Holy Trinity stratagem with that Combi Flamer, 1 command point for +1 to wounds because there's a bolt, flame, and melter weapon within the unit. Just the 1 Armorium Cherub out of this squad though, as now you can't use 2 in 1 turn. Finally, to round up the list, there's a few vehicles, 2 Mortifiers equipped with the Flails, Heavy Bolter, and 1 being an Anchorite. Pretty efficient little vehicles for the points, and again they quite like Armour of Contempt, particularly that Anchorite. Better saves and a feel no pain mean that they're a bit of a pain to get rid of. And finally, a Sororitas Rhino, which can be an excellent battlefield bunker in Bloody Rose. For a command point or 2, you can pre-game move it even if there aren't any Dominions in there, so it's very possible that you could have the small unit of Repentia getting a first turn charge, and the Retributors maybe pulling out a nasty Alpha Strike with +1 to wound. Overall, it's an absolutely ton of scary stuff, a nice mixed list with a whole bunch of different Sisters units going on. With that much brutal, hard-hitting melee, I think it'd be quite interesting to play with and against. And big respect to the person who made it work. Winning a GT with Sisters is certainly no mean feat. A lot of these units hit really hard, but will still melt fairly quickly if they're exposed, even with Armour of Contempt on the go. Looking at the other tournaments for the weekend, it's quite interesting to see another Sisters list that's on a very similar theme. This one was run by Brandon Valley, who used it to take 10th at the Rocky Top Rumble. Again, 10th being a very nice achievement, seeing as there were over 100 players in that event. It's kind of interesting to note the similarities and differences between the two lists. There definitely seems to be a fair bit of concordance between these Bloody Rose Sisters lists. They both quite closely resemble Jack Harpster's list, who took 5th at the Dallas Open, that we looked at a few days back in the summary of one competitive list for every army. It's perhaps most interesting to note the differences in this one. A lot of things are the same, including almost the exact same Canoness and Dogmata setup. Compared with the last one, Celestine, the Paragon Warsuits, and the Mortifiers are all gone, traded out for a big unit of Sacrosancts with Halberds and Litanies of Faith. The relic that allows you to re-roll a miracle dice once per battle round. Kind of interesting to still see Sacrosancts seeing play. They certainly seem a lot tamer than they were before now, with their bodyguard rule broken, a recent points bump, and being one of the only units not to get Armour of Contempt. But still they remain tough, durable, and a nice general purpose combat unit that do take buffs well and do add a bit more character protection even in low numbers. Otherwise, there's also more Repentia here, 3 units of 8, slightly bigger Zephyrim units with units of 7, and some really big meaty units of Retributors as well. 2 chunky units of 8 of them, again with the quad multi-melters, Simulacrum, and this time 2 Cherubs still. Sorry, a small typo here, I don't believe that these squads had combi flamers. Overall, no Celestine and no Walkers, but far more dangerous Sisters elite infantry units, the Retributors, Seraphim, Zephyrim, Repentia, and Sacrosanct. So anyway, looking forward to hearing what your Sisters players make of these. Could you be tempted to field the Paragon Warsuits now Armour of Contempt has made them more durable? Or would you still be more of a fan of the more tried and tested elite infantry units as Sisters seem to do best? If you've enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. We'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, with new ones out just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page, which you can find down in the video description. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some really big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.